First, there was the Big Bang, followed by the stars, then the otherworldly elder gods. Tenebrae formed in a block of ice, locked in the state for millennia. After thawing out, he partied with the Vikings. During the Roaring Twenties, Tenebrae traded the sword for DJ decks, using his newfound undead powers, which emanate from his appendix. He plays his MP3s backwards to conjure the old witch gods.
All right, I will be reading from Poe's The Telltale Heart.
True. Nervous. Very, very dreadfully nervous. I had been and am. But why would you say that I am mad? The disease has sharpened my senses. Not destroyed, not dulled them. All above was the sense of hearing that is acute. I hear all things in heaven and in the earth. I heard many things in hell. How then am I mad? Hearken, and observe how heartily, how calmly I can tell you the whole story. It is impossible to tell you how first the idea entered my brain. Once conceived, it haunted me day and night. Object, there was none. Passion, there was none. I loved the old man. He never wronged me. He never gave me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. He had never given me insult. For his gold, I had no desire. Once again, I think it was his eye. Yes, that's it. One of his eyes resembles that of a vulture. A pale blue eye with film all over it. Whenever it fell upon me, my blood ran cold. And so by degrees, very gradually, I made up my mind to take the life of the old man. And thus rid myself of the eye forever. Now this is the point. You fancy me mad. Madmen know nothing. But you should have seen me. You should have seen how wisely I proceeded, with caution, and with foresight, and with dissimulation, I went to work. I was never kinder to the old man than during the whole week before I killed him. And every night, about midnight, I turned the latch of his door, opened it, oh so gently. And then when I had made opening sufficient for my head, I put in the dark lantern, all closed, so that no light shone out, and then I thrust my head in. Oh, you would laugh to see how cunningly I had thrust it in. I moved it slowly, very, very slowly, so that I might not disturb the old man's sleep. It took me an hour to place my whole head in with the opening so far that I can see him as he lay upon me, his bed. Ha! What a madman had been so wise as this. And then, when my head was well into the room, I undid the ladder. Cautiously. So cautiously. Cautiously, for the hinges creaked, I undid it just so much that the single tiny thin ray fell upon the vulture eye. And this I did for 7 long nights. Every long night. Just at midnight. But I found the eye always closed, so it was impossible for me to do the work. For it was not the old man who vexed me, but his evil eye. Every morning on the daybreak, I went boldly into the chamber and spoke courageously to him, calling him by his name in a hearty tone, and inquiring how he passed the night. So you see, he would have been a very profound old man, indeed, to suspect every night, just at 12, I looked in upon him while he slept. Upon the 8th night, I was more than usually cautious in opening the door. A watch's minute hand moves more quickly than did mine. Never before that night had I felt the extent of my powers. I could scarcely contain my feelings of triumph to think that there I was, opening the door, little by little. And he, not even to dream of my secret deeds or thoughts. I fairly chuckled at the idea, and perhaps he heeded me, for he moved on the bed, suddenly, as if startled. Now you may think that I drew back, but no, his room was
black as pitch, with a thick darkness, for the shutters were closely fastened. That was for fear of robbers, so he knew that he could not see the opening of the door and keep it pushing on steadily. Oh, so steadily. I had my head in and was about to open the lantern when my thumb slipped upon the thin fastening. The old man sprang up on the bed, cried out, "Who's there?" I kept quite still and said nothing. For a whole hour I did not move a muscle, and in the meantime, I did not hear him lie down. He was still sitting upon that bed, listening, just as I had done, night after night, hearkening to the death watches in the wall. Presently I heard a groan, and I knew it was the groan of mortal terror, as the groan of pain or grief. Oh no! It was a low stifling sound that rises from the bottom of the soul when overcharged with awe. I knew that sound well. Maybe a night, just at midnight when all the world slept, it had welled up from his own bosom, deepening with its dreadful echo the terrors that distracted me. I say I knew it well. I knew what the old man felt and pitied him, although I chuckled at heart. I knew that he had been lying awake ever since that first slight noise, and when he turned on to the bed, his fears had been ever since growing upon him. He had been trying to fancy them cautiously, but could not. He had been saying to himself, "It is nothing but the wind in the chimney. It is only a mouse crossing the floor," or "Is it merely a cricket which had made a single chirp?" Yes, he had been trying to He had tried to comfort himself with those civitations, but he'd been trying to, sorry, I just lost track. But he had found it all in vain, because death, in approaching him, had stalked him with a black shadow before him and enveloped the victim, and it was this mournful influence of this unperceived shadow that caused him to feel, wait for it, although he saw nor heard a thing, to feel the presence of my head within the room. When I waited a long time, very patiently, without hearing him lie down, I resolved to open a very, very little crevice in the lantern. So I opened it. You cannot imagine how stealthily, until at length, a single dim ray, like the thread of a spider, shot from out of the crevice and fell upon that vulture eye. It was wide open, wide open, and I grew furious as I gazed upon it. I saw it with perfect distinction, all a dull blue, with a hideous veil over it that chilled the very marrow of my bones. But I could see nothing else of the old man's face or person, for I had directed the ray, as if by instinct, precisely on that damned spot. And now, have I not told you what you mistake for madness, but over acuteness of the senses? Now I say, there came to my ears a low, dull, quick sound, such as a watch that makes a sound that envelops in a cotton. I knew that sound well too. It was the beating of the old man's heart. It increased my fury as the beating of the drum simulates the shoulder into courage. But even yet, I refrained and kept still. I scarcely breathed. I held the lantern motionless, and I tried how stealthily I could maintain the ray upon the eye. Meantime, the hellish tattoo of the heart increased. It grew quicker and louder every instant. The old man's terror must have been extreme. It grew louder. I say louder after every moment. Do you mark me well? Have I told you that I am nervous? So I am. And now, the dead of the hour of the night, amid the dreadful silence of that old house, so strange a noise as this excited me to uncontrollable terror, yet for some minutes longer, I refrained and stood still. But the beating grew louder and louder. I thought the heart must burst. And now a new anxiety seized me. The sound would be heard by a neighbor. The old man's hour had come. With a loud yell, I threw open the lantern and leaped upon the room. He shrieked once only. In an instant, I dragged him to the floor. pulled the heavy bed over him, and then I smiled to find the deed so far done. But for many minutes, the heart beat on with a muffled sound. This, however, did not vex me. It would not be heard through the walls. At length it ceased. The old man was dead. I removed the bed, examined the corpse. Yes, he was stone dead. I placed my hand upon the heart and held it there many minutes. There was no pulsation. He was stone dead. His eye would trouble me no more. If you still think I'm mad, you still think no longer when I describe the wise precautions I took for the concealment of the body. The night waned. I worked heavily, but in silence. First of all, I dismembered the corpse. I cut off the head, and the arms, and the legs. Then I took upon 3 planks from the floor in the chamber, and deposited all between the scantlings. I then replaced the boards so cleverly, so cunningly, that no human eye, not even his, could have detected anything wrong. There was nothing to wash out, no stain of any kind, no blood spot whatsoever. I had been too weary for that. A tub had caught all that. When I made an end to this labor, it was 4 o'clock, still dark as midnight. As the bells sounded the hour, there came a knocking at the street door. I went down. I opened it with a light heart. For what now do I have to fear? 3 men entered who introduced themselves with perfect suavity as officers of the police. A shriek had been heard by the neighbors during the night. Suspicion of foul play. Information had been lodged at the police office, and the officers had been deputized to search the premises. I smiled, for I had nothing to fear. I bade the gentleman welcome. The shriek, I said, was my own, in a dream. The old man I mentioned was absent in the country. I took my visitors all over the house. I made them search well. I led them at length into his chamber. I showed him his treasures, secure, undisturbed. In the enthusiasm of my confidence, I brought chairs into the room and desired them here to rest from their fatigues, while I myself, in the wild audacity of my perfect triumph, placed my own seat upon the very spot which I reposed the corpse of the victim. The officers were satisfied. My manner had convinced them I was singularly at ease. They sat, and while I answered cheerily, they chatted of familiar things. Before long, I felt myself getting pale and wished them gone. My headache, my fancy to ringing in my ears, but still they sat, still chatted. The ringing became more distinct. It continued. It became more distinct. I talked more freely to get rid of the feeling, but it continued and gained definition until at length I found that the noise was not within my ears. No doubt I grew pale, but I talked more fluently, and then with a heightened voice. Yet the sound increased. What could I do? It was a lull, dull, quick sound, much like a sound a watch makes when enveloped in cotton. I gasped for breath, and yet the officers heard not. I talked more quickly, more vehemently, but the noise steadily increased. I arose and argued about trifles in a high key with violent gesticulations. But the noise steadily increased. Why were they not gone? I paced the floor to and fro with heavy strides, as if excited to the fury by the observations of these men. But the noise steadily increased. Oh God! What could I do? I raved, I swore, I swung. The chair upon the sitting, and I grated upon the boards, but the noise arose above all, continually increased. It grew louder, louder, louder. And still the men chanted pleasantly and smiled. Was it possibly they heard not? Oh my God, no, no, they heard. They suspected. They knew. They were making a mockery of my horror. This, I thought, this, I think. But anything was better than this agony. Anything was more tolerable than this decision. I could bear those hypocritical smiles no longer. I felt that I must scream or die, and now again,